Let me start with something that might sound controversial. Most women don't actually hate the truth. They hate how it makes them feel. And that's exactly why some of them react in ways that seem over the top, emotional, or even irrational when you're just being honest. The truth itself isn't the enemy. It's the challenge it brings to their ego, their expectations, and their sense of control. Here's the thing. Honesty is supposed to be simple. You see a problem, you point it out. You share how you feel, you say what you see. But in relationships, honesty can hit differently. It can feel like a mirror being held up to someone, reflecting insecurities they didn't want to face. And when that mirror suddenly shatters the story they've been telling themselves, about you, about them, or about the dynamic between you two, emotions can spike, defenses go up, and suddenly, what you thought was a harmless truth becomes a full-blown storm. Now, I'm not saying women are irrational or impossible to deal with. Far from it. What I am saying is that the way some women react to truth reveals a lot about how attraction, ego, and emotional psychology work in real-life dynamics. And here's the kicker: the men who understand this subtle interplay. They rarely get dragged into unnecessary drama. They know when to speak, when to pause, and how to navigate honesty without escalating things. So, if you've ever been in a situation where you simply spoke your mind and suddenly everything went sideways, where she freaked out or got defensive for no apparent reason, this video is for you. We're going to break down the exact reasons why honesty can trigger these reactions and what it really means when a woman goes crazy over something you said. Welcome to the channel, guys. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll see the truth about truth, how it works, why it can backfire, and most importantly, how you can handle it like a man who's in control. 1. Truth hits where it hurts. Here's the reality. When you tell a woman something she doesn't want to hear, it's rarely just about the words. It's about how those words land in her world. The truth has a way of hitting exactly where it hurts, whether it's her pride, her sense of self, or the version of the relationship she's been imagining. And when that happens, her reaction can feel extreme, even irrational. Imagine this. You tell her honestly that you need more space to focus on your own life. Simple, right? But for her, this isn't just a statement. It's a shockwave. It challenges her expectation that you should be constantly available, that your attention is her right. Suddenly, she's not just processing your words, she's processing the fear, the insecurity, and the disappointment behind them. And emotions flare. That's why a perfectly reasonable truth can make her lash out, argue, or withdraw completely. It's important to realize that this response isn't personal. It's psychological. Women are often socialized to connect deeply through emotional feedback. When you disrupt that expected flow with honesty, you're essentially saying, "I see this differently, and I'm not bending to your narrative." That triggers a defensive reaction because, on some level, she interprets it as a threat, not to your relationship, but to the story she's been telling herself about who you are and what she can expect from you. Now, this doesn't mean you should start sugarcoating everything or avoiding honesty. The opposite. Understanding this is about timing and delivery. If you know that truth can hit hard, you can present it in a way that reduces unnecessary drama without compromising your integrity. For example, softening the way you frame a hard truth or combining honesty with reassurance can prevent her from going into defensive overdrive. The key takeaway here is simple. Honesty will always be more than just information. It's emotion in disguise. And when a woman reacts strongly, she's revealing where her insecurities or expectations lie. Men who understand this can stay calm, stick to their truth, and avoid getting pulled into pointless arguments. They see the reaction for what it is: not a personal attack, but a human response to something uncomfortable. 2. Ego over reality. One of the biggest reasons some women go crazy when you tell the truth is because their ego gets in the way. It's not about you, it's about how the truth forces them to face something uncomfortable about themselves or the situation. When a woman's ego feels challenged, her emotions can spike, and suddenly your honest statement feels like an attack, even when it's not. Ego works quietly, but powerfully. It shapes expectations, assumptions, and reactions. When a woman's self-image or perception of the relationship doesn't match what you're saying, she feels a clash. That clash triggers defensiveness, frustration, or even anger. And that's why a simple truth like, "I need some space," or "I'm not ready to commit yet," can feel explosive. Her ego doesn't want to accept that reality, so her emotions take over. Another factor is that women are often deeply attuned to emotional energy. If she senses a discrepancy between what she wants to hear and what you're telling her, it creates internal tension. This tension often comes out externally, through arguing, withdrawing, or trying to push you into saying what she wants instead of what's true. The tricky part for men is that we often think honesty should be appreciated. We assume that if we are upfront, the other person will understand and respect it. But human psychology doesn't work that way. Most people, women included, don't like feeling uncomfortable. And the ego is the mechanism that tries to protect them from that discomfort. That's why telling the truth can feel like poking a hornet's nest. The lesson for men is to recognize the difference between truth and ego reaction. When you understand that her overreaction is about her ego and not about you personally, it becomes easier to stay calm. You stop over-explaining, stop apologizing unnecessarily, and stop trying to manage her emotions. Instead, you acknowledge the truth, stand your ground, and let her process it on her own terms. 3. Expectations versus reality. Another reason some women react strongly to the truth is that it clashes with their expectations. People in general tend to build mental stories about how relationships should go, how their partner should behave, and what they deserve. When reality doesn't match those expectations, it creates tension. And when you deliver a truth that highlights that gap, it can trigger a strong emotional reaction. For example, she might expect constant attention, regular affirmation, or certain behaviors that make her feel secure. When you say something honest that doesn't align with those expectations, like pointing out a boundary or expressing a need she wasn't anticipating, it disrupts the narrative she's built. That disruption can feel like a personal affront, even though it's simply reality. Women, like men, often resist change, especially when it challenges their comfort zone. The truth forces acknowledgement that something isn't as perfect as they thought. And while this might seem minor to you, it can feel huge to her because it threatens the stability of her imagined world. That's why reactions can feel exaggerated. It's not about the literal words you said, but about how those words clash with her mental picture of the relationship. Here's what men need to understand. Expectation management is critical. When you are clear about your intentions, boundaries, and the reality of your feelings from the start, there's less room for the truth to hit like a bombshell. The more assumptions she builds on her own, the stronger the reaction when reality steps in. Also, remember that emotional intensity isn't necessarily bad. It often reflects how much someone cares, or at least how invested they are in their expectations. But as a man, your job isn't to soften every truth or cater to her imagined reality. Your job is to remain consistent, honest, and grounded. The moment you bend your truth to fit her expectations, you lose authenticity and, over time, respect. Ultimately, expectations versus reality explains a lot about emotional reactions. It's not about you being mean or insensitive. It's about her confronting a reality she didn't expect, and emotions naturally rise in response. By understanding this dynamic, men can stay calm, maintain their integrity, and navigate honesty without unnecessary drama. 4. Fear of losing control. A major reason some women react strongly to honesty is fear, specifically the fear of losing control. This isn't about manipulation in a negative sense, but about emotional and relational dynamics. When you tell the truth, especially something that goes against what she wants to hear, it can make her feel like she's losing control over the situation, the relationship, or even the narrative she's built around you. Control feels comforting. It's human nature. Most people, women included, like to feel they understand and can influence the outcomes in their relationships. When you speak truthfully and openly, you're essentially saying, "Here's where I stand, and this is how I feel," which naturally reduces her influence over the story. That loss of perceived control can trigger strong emotions, defensiveness, anger, frustration, or even withdrawal. It's also important to understand that this fear often operates on an unconscious level. She might not even realize she's reacting out of fear of losing control. All she knows is that your words hit differently than she expected, and suddenly the emotional temperature spikes. And here's the kicker. Men often misinterpret this as overreaction or irrationality. In reality, it's simply a psychological response to feeling destabilized. For men, the key is to remain steady and composed. Recognize that her reaction is about her fear, not about a flaw in you. When you stay grounded, you signal that your truth isn't negotiable, which paradoxically can help reduce the chaos. It doesn't mean you dismiss her feelings or avoid empathy. It means you understand that her strong emotional response is natural, predictable, and not a personal attack. 5. Hidden insecurities explode. Sometimes when you tell a woman the truth, it isn't just the words that cause a reaction. It's what those words expose about her own insecurities. These are often things she hasn't admitted even to herself. But when you speak honestly, the truth shines a light on them, and emotions can explode. Think about a situation where you tell her you enjoy spending time alone to recharge. You're simply stating your needs, but suddenly she reacts defensively. Why? Because your honesty triggers her hidden insecurities. Maybe she fears she's not enough. Maybe she worries she's being rejected. Or maybe she doubts her value in the relationship. Your truth didn't create these insecurities. It only exposed them. And once that happens, emotions can spiral. This is why sometimes a seemingly small or neutral truth can provoke a disproportionate reaction. Women, like men, have vulnerabilities that get triggered by certain realities. When a truth touches one of these vulnerable spots, it can feel like a personal attack, even though you're just being honest. That's why it's common to see sudden anger, tears, or even silence following your words. The reaction is never really about what you said, it's about what she feels about herself. Here's the key for men. Recognizing this pattern allows you to remain calm and compassionate without overcomplicating things. You don't need to tiptoe around every sensitive topic, but it helps to be aware that some truths will hit sensitive areas. When she reacts strongly, it's an opportunity to observe rather than take it personally. You can maintain your honesty while also acknowledging her feelings, creating space for clarity instead of chaos. Another important point is that hidden insecurities can often disguise themselves as anger or criticism. A woman may lash out or argue, but underneath that is usually a fear or self-doubt she hasn't articulated. The more you understand this, the easier it is to stay grounded and not get caught up in unnecessary drama. 6. Testing your boundaries. One of the less obvious reasons some women react strongly to truth is that they are testing your boundaries, often without realizing it. When you speak honestly, especially about things that matter to you, it reveals not only your perspective, but also your limits. And some women push against these limits instinctively to see how firm you really are. When a woman reacts negatively to your honesty, it's often a form of probing. She wants to know, will you cave under pressure? Will you soften your truth to keep the peace? Or will you stay grounded even if it risks temporary tension? Her reaction isn't necessarily about hostility. It's about gauging your character and testing the strength of your position. Men often make the mistake of over-explaining or retreating from their truth when faced with this kind of reaction. But here's the reality. Bending to emotional pressure undermines your credibility. The moment you compromise your honesty to avoid conflict, it signals that your boundaries are negotiable. Over time, this erodes respect and can actually make future interactions more difficult. Another aspect is that women are often very in tune with social dynamics and emotional cues. They can sense uncertainty or hesitation, and they may push harder if they feel your truth isn't fully anchored. This isn't about manipulation in the negative sense. It's about understanding the relationship dance. When you stand firm, it communicates that you are consistent, reliable, and not easily swayed, all qualities that build respect and attraction. The key takeaway is simple. Strong reactions to honesty often indicate boundary testing. Your role isn't to fight, argue, or justify every statement. It's to remain steady, confident, and clear about your position. Over time, this establishes a rhythm where your honesty is understood and respected, and reactions become less about testing and more about genuine communication. 7. Why men avoid being honest. Now, let's talk directly to men for a moment. One reason women sometimes go crazy when you tell the truth is that many men don't tell it at all, or they deliver it inconsistently. When you've spent time avoiding honesty, sugarcoating things, or bending to keep the peace, the first time you finally speak openly, it can feel like a shock. The reaction isn't just about the truth itself. It's about the fact that it's unexpected. Men often avoid honesty for fear of conflict, rejection, or emotional fallout. We worry that telling the truth will ruin a relationship, make her upset, or create tension we can't handle. And that's understandable. No one likes drama. But here's the catch. Avoiding truth doesn't prevent drama. It delays it. And when the truth finally comes out, the reaction can be stronger because it's been building under the surface for a while. Here's where constructive criticism comes in. Men need to wake up to the fact that honesty isn't optional if you want real, meaningful connections. Avoiding truth may feel safe in the short term, but it creates long-term issues, resentment, confusion, and a lack of respect. Women, consciously or unconsciously, can sense when a man isn't fully honest. And when that honesty finally appears, it can trigger a strong response precisely because it breaks the pattern she's been used to. Another point is delivery. Being honest isn't about being blunt or harsh. It's about being clear, confident, and respectful. If you've learned to communicate truthfully in a balanced way, her reaction will often be more about processing her feelings than attacking you. But if you've been avoiding truth for months or years, her reaction might be intense, and that's normal. It's not a reflection of weakness on your part. It's a response to breaking old habits. So the wake-up call for men is simple. Stop fearing honesty. Speak your mind. Set your boundaries. Communicate your feelings. And when she reacts, don't take it personally. Reflect on your own patterns. If you've avoided honesty, take responsibility for that. Learn from it. Grow. The stronger you become in your truth, the less emotional chaos will derail you and the more respect you earn, not just from her, but from yourself. Here's a thought that might surprise you. Women don't go crazy because you're honest. They go crazy because honesty exposes reality they weren't ready to face. And that's exactly why so many men shy away from speaking the truth. We fear the reaction. We fear conflict. We fear losing comfort. But the truth is, avoiding honesty doesn't protect anyone. It only builds tension and confusion. By now, you should understand that strong reactions to honesty are rarely personal attacks. They reveal insecurities, unmet expectations, and fears of losing control. They also show where boundaries are being tested. And most importantly, they reflect the dynamic you've created, consciously or unconsciously, through your own approach to honesty and communication. So here's the challenge. Step up. Speak your truth clearly, confidently, and respectfully. Don't bend it to avoid temporary tension. Watch how her reactions reveal more about her emotions than about you. And use every interaction as a chance to build respect, clarity, and deeper understanding, not chaos. I want to hear from you. Share your experiences in the comments. What truths have you spoken that triggered a strong reaction? How did you handle it? I'll personally engage with your stories because this is about real connections, real growth, and learning to navigate honesty without losing yourself. Remember, honesty isn't a weapon, it's a tool. The moment you wield it wisely, with confidence and awareness, you shift the dynamic entirely. And the more you practice, the more you'll notice that truth stops being scary. For her, for you, and for the relationship you actually want.